क्या करूं?
Of this thought that it is our responsibility as an institution to work towards building a learning environment by sharing knowledge and experiences that experts like JD brings to us. Since the very commencement of GLS University's Institute of Design, we have been celebrating design every year in the form of two immensely popular events, JOT and Ahmedabad Design Festival ADF, as you all know. The two events are organized every alternate year. The first edition of JOT was in 2017, followed by a much bigger one in 2019. And since pandemic, we are here again. We had a session with GD back during our pandemic, and we all met
Online.
on a screen. And it was a fantastic interaction that took place. And again, GD is here with us. I would really like to give a round of applause for this. I would like to invite our director, Dr. Alexander, please welcome Mr. Jay Dutta.
Should also turn to the stage so that we can invite them as a speaker. Here, JD is the only difference between the JD of those days and JD of today is he has started following our path. Okay. And he has lost bit weight. Otherwise, the JD was JD there also and JD here also. And for me, some of the people are always very personal. And personal means I can tell them anytime and they will say yes. They will never say no to that. And you all have experienced and only very selective about the people to be invited. And you can witness it because last time also you have invited and today again you will enjoy. What was past that we are giving you? What is future that we are inviting our people who are in the present creating for the future. Design is always done for the future, not for the past. But we take the clue and the basic from the past, build it today, and it's work for tomorrow. That's the actually design as a discipline works. And that whenever we are inviting anybody, they are proving themselves the best. And today again, we will have somebody of that stature who will give us some input which we know where to go, but how to go that is not known. So where, how, and for whom we are going, that will be clear to you all today. And I welcome on behalf of the GLS Institute of Design, all my students and the faculty colleague and the staff and the management of the institute. I welcome JD once again for the covering set. JD
Thank you so much. Thank you. Done? Yeah. Thank you. Sure. Thanks.
I would like to introduce JD's work. Jay is currently working as the head of product design at Ulan.com. His work is at the intersection of product, tech, and design. He believes in the scale and the scope of what design can do for Bharat, India, beyond its mega cities. The opportunity to go beyond just interfaces, to in rethinking of systems, services, behaviors, and relationships. He is also instrumental in curating, leading, working with volunteer team and that powers India and Southeast Asia's largest and the most influential design in tech event, that is DesignUp conference. Jay has also journeyed across multiple specializations within design, worked across geographies, built teams, products, and brands, influencing both organizational culture and bottom lines. Jay has shared his journey, insight, and learning at TEDx, Adobe Max, collisions, and multiple conferences, events across India and abroad, Asia and US. JT has also been mentoring startup founders and design leaders across different stages of their journey. Jay has formerly been the Asia Pacific leader for Interactive Design Association, a designer in the VC. For over half a decade, he set the foundation and grew the UX practice at Adobe India, covering a diverse spectrum of Adobe products and digital platforms.
Thank you so much for inviting me, Dr. Anil Sinha. We call him Anil anyway. We think twice before we call him sir and say, it's Anil. I mean, we grew up with him. One of the things that we first learned at NID was that you need to rethink, you need to break apart whatever that you have held dear in the last 12 years of school. Before I start, a quick set of questions for you. This is a standard practice. I know you've been through that. How many of you are from Ahmedabad? Okay, that's a sizable number of people. How many of you have studied in GLS right behind you? That's only you? Anyone else? Me, that's the other one. So yeah, I think my friends, the guys that I went to school with were laughing yesterday when we met, saying that the backbencher has been invited to speak. So here I am. Everyone remember me for only one thing. I was very good at biology because I used to draw the best diagrams. And I think the only thing they think I used to get marks at school was because I presented everything very well. I would structure it, I would put bullet points, I would do lines, I would do like whatever I could, I would sort of explain everything to diagrams. I think that was my strength and the only thing that I did well. So yes, I grew up in Ahmedabad, like many of you are here from. Thankfully, I didn't have to go to somewhere else to study because Ahmedabad also had NID. Interestingly, as part of GLS, we also went to NID once. And I remember telling another classmate of mine that one day I will study in this place. So this classmate is, ye to matlab ख्वाब देखता रहता है sort of thing. He's like, anywhere dreamer always kind of thing. But yeah, I eventually landed up in NID and Ahmedabad. So yeah, Ahmedabad has a lot of fond memories for me, growing up years, school. Though I have probably a tunnel vision in terms of like a few people and a few friends with which I grew up and went to school, went to NID, and after that I have never lived in Ahmedabad. I think after NID it was, anyway, why am I talking so much? Let me just show you and do a show and tell. Okay, I hope that powers up fast. I think this is the, let me just mirror my monitors for a second and that looks huge, but okay, I hope you can read right at the end. Designers have a penchant for reading very small typefaces and creating very small typefaces which people over 40 cannot read. We used to say that when we were in our 30s that make your fonts bigger so people over 40 can read. I am over 40 now, so it's a different story. So I'm going to talk about my journey in design, which has pretty much been by accident. I think I wanted to be an architect and I became a designer. The School of Architecture is also here, so that's the other part of it. I work for a company called Udan, which was just introduced. That's my D at U t-shirt. We thought let's experiment with some Indic typefaces and stuff like that. So all hand and pretty much. Right. So what I'm going to talk to you about is a bunch of these things. I've worn many hats, not just a designer. I've been a startup founder, not once, but a couple of times. I've worked in a VC, which is very unusual. When I walked out of the gates of my design school, I had no idea what VC is. I'm sure no one had any idea who a VC is, kind of. Even the VCs didn't exist. So I think they were known by some other names pretty much. Product designer meant that they designed physical objects, not digital product design. We didn't know what recession was, and so on and so forth. There were many things that we did not know. But I think I've lived through a lot of these things. I should update it and say maybe the third recession is coming. So that's the other part of it. So yes, I've worked with 130 plus startup founders, whether you name a Misho or X or a Y or a Z, kind of whichever are the startup founders overall. I have run a conference like a product and not like a service per se. And of course, I think many of you carry a lot of the work that me and my team have done in your pockets. I'm sure many of you were forced to do that. Many of you voluntarily did that. Many of you lovingly do that. So whether it's an Adobe or Make My Trip or an Arogya Setu, there are lots and lots of apps that you probably carry in your pockets. But that's not the other part. I think there is also the parts that you walk through, like when you walk through Bombay airport, walk through Bangalore airport, again, you're walking through the work the team has done, and it's been an absolute honor and a journey. So let me just start. I think I'm going to talk about 4 larger phases, and please feel free to raise your hands. I'm happy to pause and answer questions. Sometimes what happens is that you lose the track of the question. So again, you can always tag and ask me a question via Twitter or via LinkedIn, where I'm fairly active. 4 parts essentially. The first part is the .com boom and bust, of course. The airports and Olympics and a lot of physical stuff that went in. Then going to a purely digital world, which is, and of course the other part of it, which I think has been the most interesting part of my design journey, which I never thought about, is how do you scale design culture in organizations? Because that is sacrosanct. I think what happens is, it's not design, it's the environment in which good design happens. And this is again very true for universities, like Dr. Sinha was talking about. Like, it's so lovely to see, you think about it. I mean, when I went to school here, none of this existed. And from zero to all of you are here. All of you are a creation of an idea, and the idea comes and bears fruit, and here you all are. So I think, yeah, that's the other part of it, and that's connected to scaling impact. And impact and scale in the digital world is of a different magnitude. Like, you make a poster, you make a brochure, you make a book, you will have, like, when you say 1 million copies sold, that's like once in a lifetime sort of thing. But in the digital world, you could just go 600 million, and that's not impossible as well. So I think we'll talk about all of that. And so please feel free to, I might ramble, but please feel free to pause, ask me any questions. Happy to sort of do all of that. So again, as I said, I was born here in what we call the Manchester of the East. Don't think that comparison is anymore kind of that me, in case you didn't guess it. And of course, a very good friend of ours, a family friend of my dad's, Mr. Majumdar, in ceramics department. He told me that please don't send your son to NID or a design school. They're all hippies, they smoke pot, they will go long hair. He's no longer here, poor man, but I think he would have realized I have no long hair and I don't smoke pot. I at least wish I had long hair, but then that's, actually I'm happy with my short hair, or no hair rather. So yeah, this is NID, and I'm sure many of you have been to NID, and again, that's where I met Anil, and yeah, so many work, so many discussions, so many conversations. And I think when I think about it, NID was not what happened inside the classroom, but what happened outside the classroom. You know, the chai that you had, the conversations, the arguments, the fights, like, yes, I agree with you, the film which we saw, and then you had a very heated debate. So I think this is, life happens a lot in paradoxes. You think learning happens in the classroom, but sometimes it happens outside of the classroom, which is where I think when you go into the online world, it becomes so difficult, because outside the classroom, it's just you. There is no more other people. And this is the beauty is this, all of you here, all of these interactions, all of these timelines clashing and kind of something happening overall. Of course, we had, I think the big deal for us was a lot of print work, and I was very much into typography and type design. That was my passion per se, and we had this big magazine, A3 Plus, I think, called UNLC, Emigre, and all of that. They started going smaller, I think, as demands on print kind of got there. I did a lot of work in paper engineering, as it was called then. These are some of my friends, all the people, crazy looking people, half-fed, underfed people that they look like today. So yeah, I think we had to do this typeface where we actually called Bejod Samni, which is taking the first two letters of everyone's in the group's name, and we did that. We had a lot of printing. Actually, I ended up teaching a lot of print thing as a part of an experimental project with my then teacher. He said, why don't you teach kind of thing instead of, so this was another one. Graduation, sort of, unfortunately, Mr. Moraji Desai passed away the same day, and we didn't have a graduation. So we just had a very nominal, we were all dressed for the occasion, but it never happened. So it was a graduation ceremony that never happened. So in some ways, I'm a lifelong student. So, and then I went to Delhi and this is the time when I leave Ahmedabad, and I keep coming back, but I never have stayed for more than a couple of weeks or so on. This is Delhi, and Delhi was, so if you think about it, almost like 20 plus years ago, there were not much of, like you didn't have all these startups who wanted design, you didn't have all these studios who did design, you didn't have all these industrial houses which also did design. You had the HMTs and the TVS and a few big companies. And then you had some of the studios. The studios were the predominating sort of factor in design. And I went to a studio called Rain Keshavan, a former student of NID, alumnus, one of my super seniors, led by someone called Sujata Keshavan Guha. She is kind of retired, hung up her boots. And some of the work there was a lot of the identity work. This one on the left is still my favorite after all these many years, because I thought I managed to do the Hindi, her, and the name kind of course, the Devanagari and the arrows kind of thing. This is like the very first year after graduation, and the first set of printed work which went out in of course, we were freelancing and doing some random things, but nothing at a scale, pretty much kind of. This was Indian Aluminium, the Humayun's Tomb walkthrough and stuff like that. And of course, this is some of the people that we had actually a computer studio where you had 4 computers, and there were, I think, about 9 designers. So we had to kind of block times. So it was not an age of laptops and personal computers. You just had to say that my time is 2 to 4 and your time is 1 to 3, etc., right? So this is us in the middle of when we don't have the computer kind of available. We are sitting here playing darts or playing tabla on someone's helmet. So I think this used to be a common sight, which is unthinkable today, of course. The interesting part was that I've always read a lot, and I got really swayed by the work of Jack Kerouac and, a whole bunch of writers. And if you remember, Vivekananda had this thing called Parivrajaka, where he goes off into a long tour around the country and all of that. I got super inspired by Peter Matheson, who talks about tracking the snow leopard through the Indian Himalayas and the Tibetan Himalayas and all of that. And I decided to go off on a journey. I just left my job and just went off. I had no next job really in the works, but I decided to cover 5,000 miles kind of really, and retrace parts of where Buddha was, retrace parts of like go to the Himalayas, and this is the journey. Sorry. This is the journey. I think if you see, it goes all the way across. It goes to Sikkim, Garhwal, Kumaon, everything. So the only thing was that I will never have a reserve ticket, and I will never have a fixed plan. So whatever you wake up and you say, oh, there's a truck driver who's going to Ranikhet, let's go with him kind of. So I think it was just a crazy idea like that. And at each leg of the journey, someone kept accompanying me all across. So I think there was always like 4 or 5 friends who accompanied me. Someone in Sikkim, someone down Odisha, and then by the time I came to Hyderabad, I think I was super tired. It was like crazy, 4 months on the road, no reservations. Of course, whatever money was there was almost gone because whatever you saved after the first job, and those days my first salary was 7,100 rupees, which is not even your pocket money. Is it your pocket money? No, it's less than your pocket money, right? Pretty sure. So yeah, so that was my month saving, but that got me 4 months actually. So if you think about savings from like 7,100 getting you like 4 months, actually I remember my fridge cost me 4,000. I may be sounding like your dad now, but so that's it. So this is the other part of it. I did a lot of trekking around in the Himalayas, and I think this was the good part of it because you did not need a lot of money really. I mean, people were super nice. You just went anywhere. You probably stayed in 50 rupees wala dharmshalas. You had no expectations, nothing pretty much. So you just traveled overall. And then by the time I got super tired and came back to Bangalore, again one of the ex-NID sort of seniors, Arvind, called me and said that, listen, what the hell are you doing? Kind of come to Ahmedabad, and we have this thing which we're doing with Bombay Ahmedabad, sort of a collaboration between Ogilvy and something, and we have a once in a lifetime opportunity to design India's 50th year of independence identity system. So I said, "ठीक है." I mean, this is लग गया तो अच्छा है. I mean, this is straight like year 2 of my existence as a professional designer. And so there it was. I think this is for me a very iconic image. The work that you do, right in front of it are 3 prime ministers, kind of. The work you do is actually bigger than them, suddenly you realize. Actually, it's not your work. What matters is the sentiment of the people, because it's the work of everyone, really. It's that sentiment which guides us. The logo could have been anything, it doesn't matter, really. I mean, I personally didn't like the logo, really. It was more Arvind and me collaborating on a bunch of things, but it doesn't matter. The logo could have been anything. The fact was that it was India's 50th year. It was extra special, and nothing had been done before that. So I think that was the special part of it. So people distorted it. People just, you might still see it on trucks saying 51, 52, 76, whatever kind of thing. It'll keep sort of carrying over because I think people took it to heart. That's what mattered. And then I think turn of fate. Actually, GLS also has another contribution to make to my life, which is I was born, and in NID I was always Joydeep. And there used to be the registrar Patel Bhai in GLS who changed my name to Jay Dutta. And by the time I realized that it was that all my documents were JO, and then there is JA. And then I got the passport office. That guy says I can either change it to JA or I can drop the Bhai. You take a pick. And I'm like, this is like very weird. Like, we had a lot of argument, but he said because I was in a hurry, and I had to go for the visa and stuff like that. So I never noticed till that day that my name was JAY as per the school leaving certificate from GLS, and so I became Jaydeep Bhai. Actually, the Bhai was dropped, so Jaydeep. And then, interestingly, that deep part of the deep in got dropped somewhere. And it became Jay. So I think, yeah, if I don't, Patel Bhai would have retired a long time ago. But I have to thank him for this turn of fate. So this is like, sorry? Vijay Patel. So yeah, this is where I went. So after the passport, which suddenly made me Jay, I think I went to this little tiny dot in the middle of nowhere. It was led by a French guy who had seen my work and had invited me over, and so we collaborated on a bunch of things. This was a lovely place, and the best part was that I had a 4x4 to myself, and I could go around the island, which essentially, if you spend 7 hours, you could actually circumnavigate the entire island. So it was super nice the first 4 weeks. Then I got super tired because this is like not even Ahmedabad. I mean, yeah, it's okay. It's like Ahmedabad. You could just circle it around and all of that, and we're done. But yeah, I think it had its own charm. It was beautiful, unless there were storms and cyclones. And I think they gave me a lot of latitude to do a lot of work. The other thing is that I had to learn French, and I actually can read French very well still, though I think I've lost my pronunciations halfway along the road. This was my office. You see in the middle, it's in the back of an old farmhouse. This is their manor house, and we were there partly in the garage, in the stable actually, where the horses and cows were kept. No symbolism here, no metaphorical stuff. Just randomly we were there. We painted the walls very beautifully, brightly overall. And this is the team. We won a lot of awards across southwest, the whole Indian Ocean rim, which is Madagascar, South Africa, Mauritius, quite a few other places. Of course, that's my 4x4, which I loved. This is the guy who we call King Nasser. King Nasser was usually my driver, but he always had some. He also invited us for biryani every now and then. He was the only Mauritian who could speak Hindi properly. And because he watched too much Bollywood films, and his whole Hindi was very filmy Hindi, and so he would like try and say sher and shairi also every now and then, which was very bad. But yeah, but his Hindi was good. So that was that's another of my classmates called Jatin Banker, who was also there with me briefly in Mauritius. So I'd got him in for like to help me with a few things. We did a lot of interesting work. Actually, the kind of attitude of work which was allowed was very interesting. I think you can't see it here. But I managed to pull off a lot of very unusable designs, like calendars which you cannot read any dates, and they let me do it. And they said, oh, this is great. I think beautiful big calendars, very well shot and all of that, but completely unusable. This is just of course, UX design kind of thing. I also did a website of my own. I think this is the first time that I learned coding and I'm doing websites, and I realized that, you know, what I did here, it doesn't need to be made into an artwork and needs to be like plates and printed and checked and proofread. What I do is within 1 minute, someone in New York can see it, or someone in Australia can see it. And that was amazing. So I think it just bit me that I had to be in this industry. I had to be in this whole digital revolution which was happening. And this is 99, and I think 2000, the dot-com boom is happening. There's a lot of things happening in Europe and in the Americas. A lot of mathematicians, musicians, etc. discovering Adobe, not Adobe, it was Macromedia Flash. And people could code, they could design, and the designs would come out as they coded, which was absolutely brilliant. I think so. A lot of my work was all done in Flash in early days overall, and yeah, this is where the start of that bug was, and which has been with me ever since pretty much. And some of my clients, I essentially helped them build their very first website. It's very rudimentary, like what you see here on the left. We also did, of course, the brochures, everything, but I think interestingly now I'm thinking not just of brochures and stuff, but I'm thinking about how is the identity common between your digital footprint, which is very early in those days. There is no app yet, there's no iPhone yet at all, and the rest. Of course, that took me to Bristol because some of the work I did won a few awards, thankfully, and which I have not won much in my life anyway, but I just got like sight of the day and a couple of things like that. And I landed up in the UK with a job offer which was way better than which I thought could ever happen. What I didn't realize is that I was right in the top of the boom period, and people were like crazily optimistic about technology will change the world, and you know, the technologists should be paid like crazy amounts of money and all sorts of things like that. So here I was in Bristol. Bristol is also known for the place where the guy, Kingdom Bunel, made some of the first cantilever bridges, the big ships, the iron ships that would sail and all of that. So again, very, very interesting. This is again a view from my office with the snow-covered thing. This was a beautiful place. Of course, we just went and splurged in IKEA at that point in time, whatever money we had. And we did a lot of interesting work, which was around the early stages. So I think if you think about it, this work is almost 22 years old. This is done in actually maybe 21 years old, 2000, 2001 sort of thing, right? And what you see on the top is the early thing about personalization, which is that can I change my car? Can I change the upholstery? So can you imagine how, I mean, even today we do a lot of those things, and that is such an old concept. I think this has been around for such a long time. If you look at the phones out there in the goldfish bank, and this is another thing which is happening at this time, 2000s roughly, is a lot of stuff which is actually in the print world is actually going online. So instead of filling forms in the real world, can I fill forms in the digital world? This is that early stage. SMS banking is here for the very first time. Now you must be thinking, oh my God, there's so much SMS that we get every day. Personally, I don't even look at like 90% of them, except it's some big deduction happening, then I get really worried. But I don't otherwise. I'm sure none of you do. There are like everyone trying to sell you something or some transaction. SMS is a pain now, right? But those days, SMS was the big deal, kind of. That's really the thing. And look at each of the phones. They're so different. iPhone has not been invented yet, or it hasn't come out yet. So each phone is very, very different overall. And again, just for, there is something called the PDA. PDA was the most desirable thing, a personal digital assistant. Everyone wants a PDA, and PDAs are so expensive. I'm trying to save money to buy a PDA. A PDA is like probably 1/10 of what the iPhone is today, kind of thing. But a PDA was that. I mean, you could actually have appointments and sync it with your, then God knows what, Lotus Notes or some strange calendar app which was there at that point. So I think there were a lot of these things. And of course, I worked with this guy. Has anyone read this book or seen this book? Yes, you guys should. I think this is still very, very fresh after 22 years. And I think this is amazing that this book is something that I've quoted so many times, almost like every week of my life to someone or the other for something. Actually, what the book talks about is there right in the cover. Don't make me think. This is the crux of UX design, kind of in some ways. It's such a simple book, and yet it's so relevant even today, because people are still designing things which make the users think way too much, kind of, right? And this also is a time when, so Steve and I worked together. We were in Boston for a bit, and we worked, and I was supposed to go to Boston the day when 9/11 happened. And then that was the day when everything changed, because suddenly the optimism of technology changing the world kind of changed. Just felt that tech was like your dreams and your thoughts. It doesn't really, it's not tangible. Whereas the whole tangible things was just two planes which went into a tower, two towers, and boom, they went. The economy crashed with that. Your real money was impacted. So what goes into your wallet, real stuff that you can touch, feel, buy real stuff with, that suddenly went out the window. So I think this was the turning point. And what happened was that I went back to study. I decided to understand like what powers business, economy, all of this. So I went on to do an MSc in design management from Manchester. Interestingly, I managed to do some freelance work which got me into a government-funded thing called the Innovation Park. An Innovation Park is nothing but an accelerator. How many of you know accelerators? Some of you, right? Accelerators essentially are people who take very early stage businesses and they help them kind of with a lot of different tool sets. It could be design, it could be SEO, it could be front-end engineering, it could be a lot of things, and help them become a proper business. So I think become profitable, etc., etc. So I think accelerators take a cut out of the business, of course. In this case, the accelerator was the government, so they did take a cut. So I used to work with the accelerator by the British government. So I ended up becoming a British government agent, not like a 007, but something on those lines, and helping a lot of businesses. And one of them was David, who kind of had a big wow moment, and he decided to invest in my company called Ideas Foundry. And this was Ideas Foundry, and that was located right, you can see over Gangoli's shoulder there. That building on the 6th floor, we had our office, this is Ganguly's point of view, or Lakshman's point of view, is from the Old Trafford Cricket Stadium. What you see behind is the Old Trafford Football Stadium. So these are like right in between these two stadiums is where our office was. It was a nice place. The only problem was every time there was a football match, not a cricket match. Cricket fans are much more nicer. Football match, then football, you had to like close your office by 2 o'clock because things might just get crazy and the police would be there and the fish and chip shops would all open up. And yeah, next morning you will find beer bottles, smashed beer bottles on the roads. But I think, yeah, it was seeing that the whole area come alive overall. So yeah, Ideas Foundry went, and we did a lot of very interesting work. I think this is the kind of work which I really enjoy doing, which is a cross between research, strategy, and design. So what you see is the design is just like the tip of the iceberg. But what happens, a lot of different things which were happening. We used to do a lot of work in South Africa, Ireland, Germany, all of the places overall. This was for a series of events in China by the British universities and so on, called D2B. So yeah, I think then of course the 2008 recession happened, and I decided to sort of close Ideas Founding. And I think this is this for me, I mean, we learned it at school right here behind. This is from Rudyard Kipling's If. Have you read this poem? I think for many of you, it will be a part of your school curriculum. And I think I've kind of referred back to this again and again. And I think each time it's like for me personally, I think it has been a snakes and ladder journey. So I think this is when you hit the snake, the big snake, you read this part. And then you go up the ladder, then you say, okay, I'll read it later kind of thing. So that's when my first boss, Sujata Keshavan, we are common friends in Geneva, and she came back to me and said that, hey, what the hell are you doing? I mean, there are airports to be done here in India, and you're sitting there polishing things which are already shining. And this is Europe. I mean, why are you doing work in Europe? You need to be back in India. And in some ways, that was a good wake-up call for me. Are you guys okay? I hope you haven't fallen off to sleep. Okay, good. So with that, I came back to Bangalore, to the Ren Keshavan studio. We had a 32-member team where I was one of the sort of early stage designers once upon a time. I became their executive creative director, which was a very fancy sounding title, but I think it was good fun to be there in charge of 30 people finally. And this was my team, this is the place. And of course, we did a lot of, so very interestingly, I ended up doing what would be probably India's first, what is that thing? What do you have? Those hackathons, a design hackathon. And this is way back. And this was like sponsored by the French Ministry of Culture and something, and technology and something like that, for a place called Limoges, that little spaceship-like thing you see out there. That's where it was. And we ended up kind of winning, actually. The Indian team, one of the Indian teams ended up winning some awards as well. And of course, this is what happened. This is the reason I came back to India, which was Bangalore airport. The colors are not mine. Very interestingly, when I first designed this identity, the colors were very different. They were very pastel, which was very influenced by the European palette then. I think I'd stayed there for almost a decade, and I think my palette had become very off from the Indian tonality kind of. So this girl comes to me and says that, and she's an intern, and she says that, can I say something? And I think because she was young and she could just speak her mind very, very clearly. So she just said that, listen, have you seen all the Kanjivaram sarees that people down south wear? Have you seen the colors of the houses in Bangalore? Especially when the old airport used to be there, you would land and you would see bright purple and green and pink houses kind of. And Bangalore houses, by the way, are very well maintained. I mean, they keep painting every 2 years, not like what you see in Ahmedabad kind of thing, right? They get it painted. Like Ahmedabad, Bombay, you feel like they're all crumbling kind of. One day they will all fall apart kind of, right? So I think in Bangalore, every 2-3 years, they will get it painted. They're kept very, very well. Even the small houses kind of, right? So I think just taking a cue from that, she redesigned colors. And so if you go to Bangalore airport, you will see pretty much the reflection of these 3 colors. And I think the idea was then, it was led by a Swiss consortium and not by the government and whatever. I think now it is not the Adanis, but someone else. And it's a private public partnership overall. And I think the positioning was that of purely a garden city. The thoughts were around, should it be a biotech center? Should it be a tech center? And we said, this is the most enduring, and I hope this stays that way. So that's where Bangalore airport happened, but a few others happened, like Delhi and Hyderabad. But that was again more of an identity project, but not so much of depth in terms of wayfinding and interiors and stuff like that. And of course, the Youth Olympic Games. So these are again stuff which is very large, and I'm kind of deviated from my newfound love of digital stuff kind of into these. Any questions so far? Should I pause? Anything that you guys want to know or not know? Are you guys all okay? Okay, so let me just go on then. And then Adobe happened. So interestingly, I was still talking to Adobe when I was in Manchester, and they really wanted someone to come and build team here, because the team here was very small. three people. Most people didn't know what was UX or interaction design. Most of the engineers in Adobe in India, they did not interact with designers. They didn't know what the hell designers were doing. But interestingly, they were making the design tools for designers. This is what Adobe's major business was once upon a time. Today, not that so anymore, because they have a lot of different clouds, like document clouds and analytical clouds and all of that. But this was predominantly for designers that we were doing. So I ended up over 5.5 years building the Adobe design team, design culture, design system, etc., a whole bunch of them. I don't think there are too many people who will know this name called Sita Narayan. Does anyone know the word Sita Narayan? The name called Sita? Yes. That's now you won't see that name because Sita is retired. So Sita for 20 years was the first name that you would see, the first three names you would see when Photoshop opened up. And people, I think the biggest curiosity for us in the pre-internet era was, is Sita a man or a woman? Or something else? So I think everyone believed that Sita was a woman until I met him. And he's an ardent cricket fan, goes to wherever cricket is happening. And he became a very good friend. He's retired now. But I think he's done probably 80% of the work in Photoshop. He knows. So Sita was also a very good example of someone who said, I don't want to be ever a VP or a SVP or a director or whatever kind of thing. He was always an individual contributor, as they say. He knew where anything and everything was in Photoshop, and he was extremely respected. He probably earned as much as a VP did, but he never wanted to manage anyone, kind of. And this was, again, a beautiful part of Sita. This is very interesting. If you walk down the offices of Adobe in San Francisco or San Jose or any of these ones, the entire office is full of tools. It's all multiple toolbars that you would see, and some of them are from different eras, like 2017, 2010, 2021, etc., etc. So I think it's a very interesting office per se. This was my team, and this is some of the new work that was done while I was there in Adobe. I think the idea was that let's not just do what is being done in the US, but let's keep inventing some of the stuff here. So this is something which predated Behance, and I think Behance kind of got this, killed it off. I mean, once Behance was acquired by Adobe, the Behance bosses became the bosses for this particular project, and they eventually killed it off. But the idea was this would have been a Behance plus. I'm putting it there because Avatar is coming, and this is almost 11 years old, this work. And I think very interestingly, Instagram has now introduced this filter. So 11 years late, but I think never too late to the party kind of thing. So, again, design systems was another big area, that how can we actually integrate a lot of design systems into the tool set itself. And the good part of being in Adobe was that any star designer anywhere in the world would open the doors when you say that, hey, I'm from Adobe and I want to talk to you about this particular tools. So I've thankfully used that card to meet the who's who of the design world, Debbie Millman, Paula Scher, and all of that. So I had a long tea with Paula at the Pentagram office in London, in New York, and a bunch of places. A lot of interesting work which would eventually, so I think, again, Adobe is a kind of company which moves slowly. So eventually the work does seep in, but takes about 5 years for the work to seep in, as opposed to like in days. And post that, I think I joined this company. I mean, of course, I was in Flipkart for a bit, and post Flipkart, I joined a VC. Now, that's unusual because I think VCs are like just the other end of design. They're all very mathematically oriented. They're already analytical. They don't have a creative bone, or maybe they do. So yeah, I think it was a very interesting 1 year of dancing with the VC to figure out. And that was a year when I met 130 plus entrepreneurs, founders, etc. The interesting part was a lot of founders would not like to talk to a VC, but the founders were okay talking to a designer in the VC world. So I think it was an interesting conversation with a lot of them. And one of the founding teams was Make My Trip. It was already a 16-year-old company listed in New York Stock Exchange, and probably had one of the worst designs then in India. So I'm talking about 2015, 2016, yeah. So many of you won't remember, but I think Make My Trip design was really as bad as it gets. not as good as it gets. Also because you had ClearTrip to compare against, and ClearTrip was way better, but Make My Trip was way bigger and way better kind of thing, if that's the right word for it. So when I joined Make My Trip, so I of course, for a year I worked on and off with them as a part of the VC. And one of my very good friends, who's also a very well-known designer, called me and said, "You're joking, right? You're not joining Make My Trip. You know, they just don't get design. They don't understand design." And I think my angle was that, you know, I've worked enough with people who get design and understand design and want to do good design kind of thing. It's time to work with people who don't get design. I think that's where the real challenge lies, because again, like what Sujata was saying, why are you polishing things which are already shiny? What is happening in Europe is already good. Why do you want to make it a little better than what it already is? So I think this is where I took up the challenge for Make My Trip. This is how their website, their app used to look. It was just nothing but a whole series of offers and you know, deals and discounts and very colorful. It's like Excel sheet on steroids kind of thing. This is what we changed it to after like working for a year. I could not even hire anyone because, you know, if I tell people, like people would start asking me like, why Make My Trip, kind of like, why? It's so ugly, it sucks. I think designers always think about beauty and ugliness a large extent. But I think there are a lot of underlying business decisions which were also impacted by this. And this is where the real story is. So I think this was the big change. The change was really a philosophical change. The change is going back to what I was talking about. Depersonalization. If you think about travel, you want to go to Goa, but you were looking at tickets, you never went to Goa, you went somewhere else. Now the app knows. Apps have such a great way to track you, unfortunately, that that they can actually predict what you're going to do. I mean, prediction can be much better. And I think Make My Trip wasn't using any of that. All they were doing is 30 rupees off, 25 rupees off, 10% off, etc., etc. I think what you see on the right is depersonalization, and where I convinced the then chairman, now he's a mentor more or less, Deep Kalra, was that put the my back into Make My Trip. Your Make My Trip doesn't have any my, there's no personalization there. He thought about it and he said, yeah, you have a point, do what you want to do, kind of. So he gave me a free check on that, thankfully. So this is what it became. I think there were two parts to it. One is travel is very transactional. You're buying a ticket to somewhere, it's extremely transactional, right? You don't care. I mean, it's one of these 4 or 5 flights. It's a certain time, you'd get over with it. On the other hand, travel is very immersive because you want to buy a hotel, you want to go on honeymoon, you want to go on a special trip with the family. This is very immersive. You want to make sure that this time is never going to come back again. So you better be a good time. Like imagine people going on a honeymoon. I mean, of course, they might get married more than once, but still kind of it's special. Like even if it's the second time, it's not going to be the third time. Okay, even if the third may not be the fourth, etc., etc. But anyway, you get my point. So I think you have to kind of do this whole transactional, very informational to something which is very, very immersive kind of thing, right? So we had to look at that. This is where the whole system eventually evolved. It became a fairly complicated system called the Cosmos. Cosmos became a system of systems, essentially a guiding principles, if this then that sort of thing for design kind of thing. And of course there is a algorithmic logic to it as well. And it kept evolving. Of course, I think what I see today I'm not very happy about, but hey, I think they are doing maybe what's right for them kind of. So I think this is where the evolution took Make My Trip to, and I think the team was almost a 96 people team with front-end engineers, UX researchers, writers, UX designers, motion designers, illustrators. I think it was a full, nice, big team out there. Yes, and the Cosmos keeps growing. And 2016 also was a time when one of our teachers and Dr. Sinha's colleague passed away, MP Ranjan, and what I used to do is that sometimes I would crypt to Ranjan saying, oh, this doesn't work, and this is terrible. And he said, tu kya karega, kind of. That was his traditional, the way in his Tamil way he would say, tu kya karega, something like that. So I can't imitate that very well. But anyway, so that's when I thought that I keep cribbing about conferences, that there are not enough good conferences in India. So should we not have a good design conference? Why is this conference? Okay, not design. I mean, Curious is a good conference, definitely. But Curious is more towards branding and advertising and marketing sort of world. It's not anymore, right? It has also, right. I haven't been to Curious for a long time. I think the old ones was really fancy.
Talking about the first one that happened in Goa.
In the first, second, third, I was not there for the first one, but second, third, fourth, I was there for Curious. It was like really.
First one was entirely different. Now he becomes a salesman for the guided people, younger people.
Right. I think this year they did not even have the conference also kind of. So
This will connect you with Rajesh.
no, I'm connected. Right. So I think my gripe was more in terms of the UX or technology plus design, and there is no such thing. There are two conferences which were there previously, but they are more in the enterprise UX space, which many people won't enjoy really. I mean, this is like the deep backend stuff kind of thing. So that's when DesignUp happened. This is pictures from the first DesignUp and all of that. Of course, DesignUp has now been in its 7th year kind of, and this is from DesignUp. We did one in Singapore as well. So we did a DesignUp Singapore conference, and this is sitting us up out there. We had Mahendra Bhai, we had Ravi Naidu, who does design in Daba in South Africa. He's again become a mentor of mine. And of course, this is a whole bunch of people. It's all volunteers. I mean, we don't really have full-time guys. Like Dr. Sinha was saying, we don't want to make it a business, so no one takes money from DesignUp. None of the people who work from DesignUp. There is no salaried person in DesignUp. So I think it's based on a certain principle, is like we will do as we wish. This is our freedom to do it. So we'll not compromise on quality of speakers or any such thing kind of. So this is this lady from Airbnb who's talking about designers and design systems. This is from 2017, I think. I have one for you just to see. Again, this is the conference so I'll just play this one.
One of the best conferences that I've ever been to.
For me, it was an amazing experience. I was overwhelmed by the brilliance of the people and the designers right now. Actually, I think that the group I had yesterday on the workshop was the best group I ever had on the workshop.
The conversation quality and the amount of critical thinking and questioning has been one of the most deep and profound that I've seen at conferences. I really respect and appreciate the diversity of seeing women like Val, Head, and Tatiana get up on stage. I feel very excited to speak, and having a lot of female presence in the design conference, I think, speaks to what the future is. So I really appreciate you all bringing diversity and making it a priority.
I'm blown away, to be honest. I think I have never seen a kickoff like this for a conference. People were opening up and experimenting and failing and trying again is such a key part of design. It was a very subtle way to send a very strong message, and I really liked it. The attention to detail for this conference is top notch. You can feel it's a design conference run by designers for designers. That's the key.
I'll just pause it there. I think you can just go and watch it online pretty much. And the 2021 has also come out. So that's if you just search for DesignUp YouTube, you will find it out there. There are lots of talks as well. So again, I think from Airbnb to Atlassian, you name it, any company in the world, I think you will have speakers from all over. And what we try and do is also get speakers who are very different. So we had a lawyer this time talking about copyright laws and how should we even design our terms and condition pages, for instance. With someone who works in or who loves doing cooking, and he's talking about the algorithm of cooking and how can you actually combine and mix and match things. So we actually have a very, very eclectic set of people. The interesting part, and this is again some of my NID friends, we were talking this year in September, they were saying, hey, we see less designers this year. And I said, this is the beauty of it. Because suddenly you have investment bankers and you have technologists and you have lawyers and you have other people who are interested in design. And I think this is a good thing. We need to evangelize design to non-designers. Designers are getting bought in. I mean, they love design, so that's not a big deal. So I think this was a change that we are seeing over the past. I think 20% to 30% of people who come to DesignUp today are non-designers, but they want to use and leverage design in their organization. And I think this is the sea change which we really want to do. So it's not for branding professionals who love branding or designers who love design, but how do we spread the word around design? Okay, so I think this is what we believe in, what I keep talking about is that design is what makes tech really edible kind of and appetizing as well. Otherwise it's just nothing but very unappetizing code. So that's one. We actually had a deconstruct report which talks about you can just go online and download it for free, DesignUp deconstruct on the DesignUp website. So yeah, I think there's a bunch of things. This is for you to understand the evolution of design in tech industry in India. So what happened 20 years ago? Like what happened pre-Infosys? How did the first set of designers who worked like Dhuli and a whole bunch of them, like what, I mean, sometimes you find it very difficult to even understand what the hell did they do actually kind of. But I think they were designers and technologists who, yeah. So I think, right. So, right. So there are a lot of these people who, when we were also growing up, we didn't understand what did they do, but I think it's for us to understand, hey, they are part of the history. And we are sitting on the shoulders of giants pretty much. That's what happens. So the last one, and I think I shall stop after this, is, of course, I'm not talking about whatever the work is happening at the Udaan at this point in time, but this one is about the latest or not so latest piece of work. So essentially, I got dragged into a major argument around privacy with one of my very good friends, co-founder now of a company into healthcare, who actually designed one of the very easy ways of doing contact tracing per se. And this is pre-Android and iOS guys saying, this is the way you do contact tracing. He was like 8 months ahead of that curve. I think what happened was that he saw this one from Kerala. I think this was in Twitter in sometime in early March, where they're saying that this is a flow of a patient, of a COVID positive person, and he was in these locations at this time. If you were there, please go and contact this helpline because you may be infected. Now, this is a very hard way for people to understand, was I there? Did I get infected, etc., etc. So this guy said there's another way, and I think we can actually make it a very, so essentially he called me in on day 2 when he was very excited about his discovery, and we had a major debate on privacy and, going back to Yuval Noah Harari and all sorts of things that we went into. But I think he managed to convince me this was a good, safe way of doing contact tracing, and it can be purged, all the data can be purged very, very quickly. And that was where we kind of, we put it forth as a possible contact tracing program. Government was already working on something. They had done a couple of experiments, but they had failed at scale. Because I think 3 things you need to do is, one is that your OTP verification needs to be able to scale. You're not talking about just 1 or 2 thousand, but millions. You should be able to purge and clear out the cache and data and not have that resident in there. So there's a bunch of criteria, and it should be hack proof and all of that. So that's where Arogya Setu came in. And this was so we did not have product manager for Arogya Setu. I doubled as both product manager and this. The guy who was the product manager said, I'm not interested in product management. I'm interested in data. And he was the founder of, or he was the guy who actually started Google in India. So I think it was a very tight-knit team from ICMR, IIT Madras, from Niti Aayog, from the PMO. So I think every day we would meet for 2 hours. I think the speed of decision making was absolutely crazy. I mean, you thought governments could move, and I mean, we were like galloping. But it's also a private-public partnership, so I think that was the other part of it. In that 2 hours, we had to review data, we had to review what was going wrong, make a decision, and this was 7 days a week, 2 hours every day, day in, day out. Phones were all standby. 3 in the night, you could get a call because there was a problem. Every day, one release would go out in initially 8 languages, then 11 languages. There were some glitches initially. The guy who was actually doing it, his dad was a Hindi professor at BHU who made the first translations. I think friends and families, everyone pitched in, hey, I need someone to do Bengali and I need someone to do Gujarati. I reached out to friends here to say that, hey, we need to do something in Gujarati very quickly. Finally, I think this is how it became a collaborative stuff. Some of the illustrations you see, we have done by a bunch of friends again in the design community. So in some ways, we were orchestrating it, but the community came together in many ways. So this is on the right, what you see was one of the companies which took a few icons from one of my designers who had done it and then extended it to different things. I think the first one, if you see the very first Arogya Setu, actually is a lot of text, because Arogya Setu is about a probability. There is no certainty. How do you explain probability? It's a very tough concept even to explain to a very learned person, because this is all about if this then that, but it may not be this. And so the first one was such a disaster. The very first day. Second day we just changed it. We knew we had to change it. By 4th day, I think we came to what you see. Then the color coding happened. Then there was, we had a privacy lawyer as well, one of the big guys in this name, who I had invited to DesignUp because he knows a lot about privacy more than anyone else, I think, in India. And he's got a lot of depth in that. He would push back on a lot of things. We would push back on a lot of things. One of the things we did was that how do you prevent accidental upload of your data? We had too many, we actually started building in friction, which is not something you typically build into products. In commercial products, you want it to go fast. In this, we wanted to make it go slow. People doing self-assessments can go crazy because this app is only one thing, so they just keep doing self-assessments. So I think a lot of different design rules were thought of for this, which you don't do in the commercial world. So I think that was a departure overall. Then, of course, we started getting media and we started getting more and more to-dos and stuff like that. We wanted to do, like, for example, is a blue band for doctors. I think the privacy lawyer had a point, which is said that actually discriminatory, because a lot of societies and apartment blocks were not allowing doctors. They were actually anti-doctors because they said, this guy comes in and then spreads it. So if in a society forum, you have to show your Arogya Setu, and the doctor is clearly marked as a blue, then that person is immediately discriminated. So you can't really have a special code for doctors. So you had an internal way of marking it, because this doctor is going to be sort of meeting more people, there's a prone to sort of having infection. That's a different code that we understand, but not the whole world needs to understand that. So I think a lot of these kind of checks and balances were also built in. A lot of these stories are not there out there for public consumption anyway, because a lot of things that we did not allow the app to do. And of course, I think within about 6 weeks, we did a design system for it, which is kind of unheard of because typically it takes months and months. This was a fairly clear, clean guideline and system for it. So, and then we handed it over to the government completely. So yeah, I think that's the story. So you could, of course, follow me on or ask me any questions via later if something strikes you via Twitter or anything. I do a fairly deeper dive into the world of philosophy of career and life through fullempty.substack. My latest avatar is being a coach to CXOs and founders. That's my FullEmpty new avatar as such. As always, I have too many fingers in too many pies. But yes, I think thank you for being such wonderful listeners. Oh, actually, suddenly there's 3 takeaways also. That's great. If you guys are okay, then I'll give you 3 takeaways. So first thing is looking backwards. I think today what I did was a lot of it was looking backwards. I just looked backwards and for you guys. And this is the first takeaway. And the takeaway is that you really can't. This is again a Steve Jobs quote. I think now it makes sense. I understood it, but it makes so much sense today, 25 years, 26 years later, that today, as you are students, none of that might make sense. But it will make sense. It will start to only make sense in hindsight. That you suddenly realize, oh, this is what happened. This is how the dots connect. When you're going around, you feel like, oh my God, where the hell am I? But sometimes you turn a corner and you see, oh wow, the view changes completely, kind of. So sometimes you just need to get your head down and do it. Just do it. It might not seem sensible at that point of time, but do it. The second thing I've learned working in the digital world, and of course even in the print world, is that you write your work on water. What you do today is really gone. When you say you write your work on water, it's gone. It just doesn't exist. That version of Arogya Setu I did at a certain point in time, that no longer exists. That would have been rewritten about 76 times by now. That version of Make My Trip I did when I last did it, that probably has been rewritten 200 times since then, right? So it keeps changing. So don't fall too much in love with your work. I think it is subject to change. It is subject to so much of revision, and people will come after you. They will change it for the better, for the worse, for whatever kind of thing. But do the best you can, kind of. The real thing that remains, and this is where I have put tons and tons of photographs, is really the people that you enjoyed working with, and they were part of your working life. They stayed with you till 4 in the morning, and you had to project to complete, and you remember all of that. That is what remains with you, the memories of that. And yes, how many of you have heard this term, ichigo ichi? It's a Japanese word. I think it's a very like typical Japanese words all over the place. I think it's a very complex word in the sense that it essentially means about a moment in time. Like this moment in time will never come again. All of you here sitting, listening to me, all of you here sitting next to each other, this combination, this time, me speaking, will never come again. This only happens once in your lifetimes. And so cherish this moment, because this moment will never come again. We layer it with too much thoughts about the future and worries about the future. Kal kya hoga, ye kya hoga, I have to pay this, I have to do that. Enjoy the present, because this time will never ever come back again. For me, for you, for all of us, our timelines, and if you guys have watched all these science fiction movies about timelines overlapping, this is that unique moment in time where all our timelines overlap. It will overlap again for many of you, but not in the same way ever again. This is only once in a lifetime. So this is the thing about ichigo ichi, treasure the now. And that's with that. Thank you so much.
I would like to please recap faculty, students.
Hi, loved your talk. Okay, this is actually not so much about you as your insight into something that's always intrigued me. I've been in filmmaking, and FCP 7 was like it, right? And at that point, Adobe Premiere was very clunky. And then 7 went on and on and on and on, and by the time 10 arrived, 10 was clunky, and Premiere became it. Okay, for indie filmmakers and for students. What actually happened behind the scenes, this transition from FCP being wow to FCP this, and Adobe suddenly becoming the new star kid on the block? Tell us about what actually went on.
Right, so for those of you who didn't get it, FCP is Final Cut Pro, which is again very loved. So I think I have had a lot of people talk about video products from Adobe. And they say that
FCP 7 to 12 years.
right.
And when 10 came,
No, I think what happens is that people are taking bets, And again, FCP is a completely different department, which was not privy to it. But I think it's a pattern which keeps happening. Designers, engineers, product managers, business heads, marketing heads.
These 5-6 different sets of people come together to predict what would the next blockbuster. And I think this is the real story of a lot of push and pull. Adobe actually has a very interesting, used to have, I hope they still have, process called SyncDev or synchronized development, where I think we would go through a round of like the marketing team says this is what customers want, this is what we have heard from customers, and this is what we have interviewed people. Engineering team says, listen, this is very buggy and this will fail. If we do the next one, there is a problem, we need to correct this. Architecture is kind of sucks in this part, etc., etc. Or we have got this beautiful new technology, we should introduce this. This is like, wow, it'll blow away people, right? And engineers are not thinking whether it's wow or not. They have like thought about a technologically brilliant piece. But designers will balance a lot of these things and say that this is what I think users want, and this is what marketing says, engineering says that, let's balance it. From a business point of view, they're saying, will it sell? Will it be the next Christmas blockbuster kind of thing? Will more people buy it? Will it convince them to go from 7 to 8 and or not stick to 7 anymore? So I think those are the sort of things which is going on. So I think synchronized development is where actually they go for a week. So I remember there was the time we went to, there were a lot of times that we went to. We actually, it's a very interesting Illustrator is used by Levi's Jeans as well as Mitsubishi Motors in Japan. So I think you spend a week in Japan, you actually tell them this is the next Illustrator, rough kind of thing, this is what is going to be there. And then they are asked to vote on features. And people vote and they say, okay, this is not good. What you thought was brilliant suddenly comes down there. What you thought was okay, kind of makes it. So you go through a round of voting with multiple customers. And then you keep changing the order of things. Within a week you would. And for example, we did the same with publishers in Hamburg, for instance, kind of, right? For InDesign. So I think some of this, then you kind of said, this is my thesis. This is what the next X is going to be. They also look at what is going to happen, like some competitor is bringing out new technology. So how is that technology going to impact what we do? Will it kill us? Like for example, will Figma kill, I'm sure it was on the minds, will Figma kill Adobe's XD kind of thing, right? So I think they keep all of that and then they make a bet, because that bet takes about a year to build or 2 years to build. So you are actually taking a bet on some things 2 years before that it actually gets built. Shit. Sometime along the way, your bets may just go off. I think that's what happens. Sometimes business triumphs, sometimes technology triumphs, but it's like a film, Sometimes the film bombs, sometimes the film becomes successful. You never know. But I think they're putting a lot of science behind to think about what will make it successful. So yeah, I think that is, I hope that answers your question.
The general perception outside is they got so busy with iPhone, they forgot to work on FCP. They kind of let it fall by the wayside.
No, I think also sometimes it happens is that they don't want to tinker with a good thing. That's the other fear. If you got a bestseller, or if you, it's like Avatar as a film again, how do you make something which is already so good even better? So sometimes I think it's more the fear of messing it up, where they say let it be, let's not kind of break a good thing. I think one of the things that I have heard as being part of Adobe year after year is, please don't change anything, please make it faster, please make it compatible with more OSs and the latest versions, please don't change anything. Why do you want to change anything? So I think this is where it is, because you change one thing and people then, like the pro users, get really upset that, why did you change that? Like for example, once we had the space bar in Illustrator was no longer the hand. That was an outrage. Like how can the space bar not be a hand? You might think that's such a small thing, but that was an outrageous thing. I mean, people were like, this is like muscle memory. So you can't change muscle memory. So yeah.
Is there any way we can intern at your organization?
As of now, no, but I think we actually had interns at DesignUp. We just finished one with JKLU, We actually had some experimental ones with GLS also, but we will definitely open up something for sure. I mean, it's an experience to be able to intern for a conference and actually see your thing going live in production. So yeah. Keep following us
on all of these links.
Whenever something comes up, we always talk about it. We are out there always.
Hi sir.
Hey.
Today I wanted to ask you about those two startups you mentioned. Like what was the inspiration, why you started them and why you have to shut them now?
I think by startup I would say Ideas Foundry was a startup and it ran for 2 years. Recession is what killed it. I think I realized that in the recession, Europe is not a great place to be because it gets really badly hit. So I kind of voluntarily decided to wind it down. The second one was called ConfIQ, and ConfIQ was a conference rating platform. You can say it's a Zomato for conferences. Or, I mean, Zomato is into food delivery, but before Zomato was a food delivery, it was all about rating restaurants and food. So it was about rating, or TripAdvisor, for example, for conferences. It did very well, actually. We did get some initial funding and traction and all of that. But I think toward 2015, we had to shut it down because we were not getting enough runway to run it for like a year or 2 years. We needed that runway. Interestingly, the VCs who gave me the initial traction on that, they absorbed me in a full-time role. So I think it became a win-win. Their angle was that you can still work on it in your side project kind of a mode, but not in a full-time mode. And if it goes somewhere, we'll fund it. Yeah, something else happened and that was it.
Thank you.
Hi. It was really very interesting to see the roller coaster life that you have led. I just wanted to ask you something. Since you were leading a very comfortable kind of a life as an executive creative director, why did you suddenly decide to drift away from what you were doing? I mean, is it like a very natural phenomenon for a designer, or is it something I mean, there are two ways to look at it. Either you hunt for opportunities, or opportunities come your way. So how do you want to define that?
No, thank you.
Thanks, and that's a good question. I think a great question actually. So I think I've been, part of it is your own personal awareness, and I think the way you framed it was very nice. I think opportunities come to us in many ways. The question is, are we ready for it? I always feel that I'm super curious, and I'm someone who has taken risks head on each and every time. I've not shied away from risk taking. And I'm probably like, if I was a day trader or something, I would be the high risk category trader kind of. I am not, but yeah, I think I would fall in that category. And I think risks, I welcome risks. And each time I think it's an opportunity for me to learn. I think I'm very passionate about learning. So I just finished one very long course in coaching, for example, executive coaching. Now, I didn't do it, but I just felt like, hey, this is very interesting. I want to learn. So I think I'm a lifelong learner. I'm super curious. I keep doing things. I keep experimenting. And maybe people like that also get bored faster. So I think somewhere it's a fear of getting bored. And the other thing is the attraction of learning something new. So every time opportunities have come my way. And some of the most fearful opportunities, I have kind of embraced it. And I said, let's run with it. I've never done something like this, so I'm going to do it. Like, for example, Flipkart was a scary opportunity. I didn't speak much about it. Make My Trip was an even scarier opportunity for me because I might fail. My peers would look at me and say, this is shit. And this really sucks. What the hell did you do for 3 years? And it all came out looking terrible. But yeah, I thought, let me take that plunge. Who knows?
Answers.
People didn't know about it.
Right.
Yeah, that's my past life.
Very interestingly,
I also, you could say a sixth sense or whatever, I also felt the branding world would be dying out soon. And because I had sort of dabbled enough in the digital world, I realized that the notion of branding as it traditionally exists, as companies were practicing it then, in 5 to 10 years, it won't exist. And I can see that happening, already unraveling, because the branding project sizes have decreased, the costs have decreased, because your experience lives in your pocket. And the app that you use a lot, you don't even see the brand actually anymore. ठीक है.
Hello, sir.
Hi.
Sir, throughout your journey, did you ever feel like you're not liking your work, or you felt like your work is very lame or something like that? And if yes, how did you come out of that?
That's a fun question. And I think it happens. To creative people, it happens more. People who want to do something exciting and new, it keeps happening more. Because every now and then you settle into a routine and you say, this work looks like last month's work, and last month's work looks like last year's work, and everything looks the same. Main kya kar raha hu? Why do I even exist? And all of that. So yes, which is absolutely fine. I think so. The bigger question is, why do you want to do it? I mean, part of the reason why we work is for the money, of course. I mean, there is one angle to it. But some of us don't have to work for money. That is also great. Unfortunately, not me. But yeah, I think if you have the option, that's actually another problem, because now you don't have to work for money, and then you're thinking, what is interesting, kind of, right? So I think this is even worse a problem to have. But okay, so if that was not the case, I think you need to really examine and see what is it that's not interesting about it. Why do you feel stuck? Is it, so I think in my coaching sessions, a lot of questions come around growth. And the growth essentially is to do with learning. And I think people don't understand it. They feel like, I'm not growing. And when you say, what do you mean you're not growing? They might say it's about the title. I'm not. And this is not like a school where you go from first to second to third. Every year, if you pass the exam, you keep growing. Because actually, Microsoft has a system where they have cut their titles in many ways. So there is a false sense of growth. But you're not really growing. But you can feel like my next title is the next title, move around, right? There is that sense of growth. But I think a lot of times what you're talking about is the feeling of, I didn't learn anything new. I didn't apply myself. I'm still doing what I did. It's becoming very boring. The question then to ask yourself is that, and this is what I've done very often, this is where I keep learning something, I keep reading, I keep doing something, is essentially, what do I want to know, which maybe my boss or my teacher or my fellow students can't tell me. See, I think the way I've always thought about it, no one owes me anything. My teachers don't owe me anything. It's great. I think it is. I've been really lucky to have wonderful teachers like Anil and a whole bunch of them in the UK, in here, and everywhere. But the fact is, you are responsible for your own learning. You're responsible for your own growth. Your manager is not. Your teacher is not. No one is I've been also a manager for so many people. And this is what I tell them is especially all of you guys, will have careers which are extremely long. And because of technology, you will have much more flip-flops. I think what Anil faced in his lifetime, what I face and what you face are going to be 3 very different phases, right? You will have to keep changing the career trajectory more frequently than ever before. So learning is going to be very critical. You are going to work for 30 years, 35 years, 40 years, because longevity will increase. Imagine you're going to live till 90, right? And you retire at 60. What do you do for the next 30 years? Or, sorry? We actually need 2 post-retirement jobs almost kind of thing, right? So I think, and technology is taking over. So, okay, I'm digressing now, but I think coming back to your question again, is I think you need to understand, where does learning take place? What can you make it interesting? If the work is making you stuck, what is making you stuck? I think this is almost a Socratic inquiry into your work and saying, why? I mean, have you heard of this 5 whys? like, why is this? And then you say, this is because I'm getting X. So why is X happening? So I think ask those 5 whys and you probably come with an end which is like, Acha, I never thought about this before.
After every 3 months. So if this gets too much,
So I think
the question here is that, is it the work, but what in the work? So when you start asking those more subtle questions around the work, maybe you'll find a different entry or a different answer to it. Try doing that. Try doing that with your friends as well. Sometimes what happens is that we, and especially now, today, in today's generation, which we didn't grow up with, thankfully, is that you look at other people and say, "Arey, iska job change ho gaya. This guy went into, he got a better promotion. He did this. That guy bought a bike. He went on whatever Thailand trip, etc., etc." So you start comparing. But if you, without comparison, what is actually going on? Go deeper into yourself and you'll find the answer there. Read fullmt.substack.com.
When you're working on a project,
when do you learn when to stop and move to the next?
Yeah, it's a good question.
See, the thing is that I have worked.
because you work with
120 startups, so you must be knowing when do you want to stop and move to the next.
Thankfully, that was a very much more contained thing, and I gave hours as opposed to a project sort of things. That was the good part of it. But I think in some cases, some of these startups, I realized that these. For example, I'll tell you about one guy. He's an ex-CEO of a Malaysian, of a very large Indian bank in Malaysia. He was retiring, and after retirement, he thought this was a startup idea. He had enough money. Money was not the criteria. So he came to us and he said, I already have so much money, but I want even more funding, and I want to do this, and I want to change the mortgage industry and blah, blah, blah. So my VC guys after a point gave up because they said analytically it doesn't make sense. Aap usse baat karo kind of thing. So I spoke to him once, then I realized that this guy is going to burn his money because this is not a very user-friendly, or he is not changing the industry. He thinks he is from a banking perspective, but not from a consumer perspective, not from a consumer lens. So with him, my interaction was maybe 3 into 1 hour sessions, where I think this was what I wanted to communicate. I also wanted to understand that maybe I am wrong. What if I'm wrong? So maybe one of the sessions was, what if I am wrong? What if he's wrong? And probably ended at a point where saying that I don't think it's a good idea. You will burn your money. Please don't do that. And that's where it ends, kind of thing, right? But in some cases, it's about saying that maybe I'll take you to a certain X place, or X ke baad, you continue your way. The other thing is that you also want to take founders to a certain place, but you don't want to handle founders who are not open to your suggestions. Then you have to cut it short. So there is this, have you guys heard of Ramana Maharishi? So he was one of the enlightened saints, one of the most recent kind of a lot. And there was another upstart called UG Krishnamurti, not J Krishnamurti, UG Krishnamurti. UG Krishnamurti also is an enlightened guy, but he was a crazy guy, and he's written a lot. And he's kind of, look him up, he's a quite an interesting character. So UG Krishnamurti is like a spiritual seeker, and he goes to Ramana Maharishi and says that, can you give me enlightenment? Ramana Maharishi is very flatly says, I can give you, but can you take it? And I remember that line very often, that I can give you advice, but are you open to taking it? Are you able to take it? Are you able to actually implement some of it? And when you realize that the person or the company is not able to, you end it much faster. Because it's not about you. I think it feels good to have that ego of saying, oh, maine isko itna gyan diya and gave so much advice. But what's the point if it's not going to be taken forward? It's about the user, not about you, not about him. It's about doing some dent in the business world. So I think that's where you cut it short otherwise. That's where I have probably honed my sensitivity to figure out I can't really make a difference here. So I shall not even try to make a difference. What I have increasingly adopted is the approach where it should be led by you as a change maker and not by me. If you take that responsibility as a change maker, I want to make change, I'm going to help you 110%. If you are just kind of just telling the words but not meaning it, And that is where I worked almost for a year as a VC with the Make My Trip guys before I kind of felt that they were ready to make the change. That's why I joined them. Till then, I would meet with them every week, couple of hours, and that's about it. So I think that's what my general philosophy is. I hope I didn't waffle too much.
What do you say about the road trip you took? Could people take?
Of course, I think more young people today should take it. Absolutely, and you should take like a crazy road trip, not a road trip for Instagram, but road trip for yourself.
I would like to request Alisa to please come and conclude this and give us a vote of thanks to Jay.
The first time I was taking notes. Yes. Yeah, you have talked wonderfully, and it's reminded me a lot of my past. But there is a lot of learning with the past as well. So when first time you mentioned about Ashok Majumdar, who was your father's friend, a great learning has happened with Ashok Majumdar was, I'll take few minutes, huh? It's not very easy. So Ashok had a fight with Vyasa that time, if you remember that Vyasa. And he has decided that he will not work for the institute anymore, but he will not leave the institute. Every day he was very clear that if I come late, I'll be fired and I'll be asked to leave the institute. So he was never late in the institute. 9 o'clock means dot 1 to 9, Majumdar was inside. And then he will leave 6 o'clock. All the year when I was in NID, I saw him. Every day he was coming and going, not talking to anybody, just sitting on his chair, coming and going. That was Ashok Majumdar. Okay, then you also talked about Morarji Desai when your convocation was supposed to be. We all take birth many times because we celebrate our birthday every year. Morarji Desai was the one who died many times. The reason, once the message came, Morarji Desai died, so we have to cancel our convocation. Postpone our convocation, we postponed it for a week. And then suddenly message came, no, he is still alive. He is not and then we started planning again. And all the invitations, all the students were sent that, okay, come, we are having convocation next week. And then he finally died. We had put up all the exhibition and all and then we have to give the certificate to the students in person and not to the as a celebration. Then you also talked about Sujata. Sujata, where you did your interns. Sujata was a big name those days. Even now Sujata is a big name, but the company is closed now, I think. Yeah. And for your information, if you don't know, Sujata has donated 50 lakhs rupees to NID to become the award provider, a scholarship provider to the graduating students. So her contribution to the institute is very different. So if any students think that the teachers, we don't owe to the teachers anything and neither the teacher owe to us, that's not true. Because when the teacher and the students relationship comes, it's always give and take. There's no way that you can run away from that. Okay. Then you talked about Vijay Patel. Vijay Patel, who was in the administration that time. I'm also a sufferer of Vijay Patel. Because I'm from Bihar, so I came to NID. My name was Anil Kumar Sinha. Yeah, you are married? I said yes. You cannot be Kumar then. He made me Anil Sinha. And that's how I become Anil Sinha. And I faced a lot of problems because of that. My whole certificate says Anil Sinha, Anil Kumar Sinha. And my office, all the things. Even today I got NOC from GLS and that says Anil Sinha. Now passport have Anil Kumar Sinha. This is having
Anil Sinha. They are going to make a okay. Other thing you talked about Curious. I remember Curious when Dota Design was there today, and that time we were sitting in Dota, and Rajesh came, and we had a whole lot of discussion. His idea was to how to motivate students to do more work and connect the students with the global world and all that. A very wise idea. So we thought, okay, we will join him and we will help him as much as possible. So finally it was decided that he will give me free passes for 50 students of NID and 5 of the faculty. So we went there with the 50 students free and the 5 faculty stay and travel, everything was from Curious. Next day again he came, and last year you got 50 students and the 5 faculty, it was very nice. So this year again, I said, what is the discount? He said, no discount. I said, nobody will come. So from the learner-centric, it becomes the business-centric, the doer-centric. And he has started getting a whole lot of foreigners to talk into it. You know? But the people were looking for that, what is happening in our own country, how to connect with our own country, and that kind of things people are looking for. So if you go to the Curious today, you will find very few students there because they are not giving any discount to the students and no facility to the students. So that's how slowly the things are started failing. Okay, then you talked about okay, then dot, you talked about the dot. Last year in the convocation, we said the dot is connecting dots. And today I talked to my colleague Arun that will make it dot is moving. You know? So moving dot, that will be our this year tagline, and we are going to work on that. Because last year we connected it, now we will start moving, and that's how we are going. Okay. Now I'll talk about interns. She asked. See, there are, what has happened, Debbie, is that institution started taking interns as a granted. So many people, first year they will take the students and they don't have faculty to teach. And they will think that, okay, I'll send them for the internship and they will come and they will be happy. But here in GLS ID, I made it a point, there will be no internship in the first year, second year, until third year. So once they are almost about to complete their third year, they are allowed to go and get the feel of the industries. Because recently, even Sudhir has tweeted something that they are not understanding what the internship. But it's a need that institution and industry should have a discussion on that what is the intern's benefit to the industry and to the institution. Because industry and institution have to come together to help each other in terms of workforce, in terms of the improvement of the design as a career. If that will not happen, then we'll keep on talking about the gap between the industry and the institution. What I'll request with the issue is that, okay, my teachers, I don't owe anything or they don't owe anything. So on that, you definitely owe me something. You can't do this, no to the interns. I'm not going to put a condition. Sorry. See, I have nothing to do there. And they are after retirement. And very clearly, they talk about he is working for money. This is what he said. I don't work for money. I worked for money when I was in the institute. And he has very nicely said, if you will not take the risk, you will not gain. All the project which made me Anil as Anil is only because all other faculty of institute has refused and I took over and I did it. So if you take risk, then only you will grow. Nothing to worry about this thing. What will happen is wherever you are working, if you are working individually, then failure and success can make difference. But if you are working for some organization, it's not you are failing, it's the entire organization is failing. So make sure
that you are not worried about failure, and there's nothing to fail in the country, our country. Even if something which is rejected by a group of people, other group of people is ready to take. Think of the political scenario is very, very valid in our country. एक कुछ बोलता है दूसरा डांटता है कोई प्रॉब्लम नहीं है and it's how the design domain is actually increasing. Recently I was in Pune and Sudhir's India's Best Design Studio Award, and there I said initially it was talked about and I seem to disagree with you, the brand is going to die. In design field, nothing dies. Just recall what was the design definition given to you. Design is all about problem solving. Even today that is solving problem. Maybe it's a different kind. And the different dimensions are going on adding. Earlier the dimension was seen only in the 3-dimension, 4-dimension, the 6-dimension, all that kind of. Now it's a different group of people are coming and joining design to actually increase the design. So a whole lot of things are happening. I think if I get an opportunity here in this institute only to have a seminar with the industry and the institution to understand each other's need and to support each other in a better way. That's something which is needed, and that initiative has to come from Design Institute only. So with all students and the faculty, I think we will take all the industry help, and we must do it. Because recently also, what Sudhir had done the same case, he designed the Bikaner wala na. He called that Bikaner owner to talk about design. And then it's all business, it's all business today. Yeah. Design is no more developing business. Design itself become a business. You know? So if you are actually designing something, if you have a fear that I might get into the court case and all, so you will get the lawyer with you. A whole lot of things are happening. There is a lot to, but we need to be curious. We need to open our eyes. We need to actually always be attentive, and wherever the good is, take it. Take it. And there is no question of I got stuck. If you are stuck, fly. You know? So there is no trying to jump on the sky. Jump karo na. If you can't walk, jump. That's the only way. But I must say your talk was very, very interesting, and things are changing. We will also change. So let's have a great round of applause for
I request first 5 rows to please come and climb the stage. First 5 rows.
Thank you.